because most people are happy with the status quo. Like people who hold the information are happy with the status quo. I mean, China obviously is not going to release any new information that could help us investigate the lab, because of course they're very insistent that the lab had nothing to do with it. But of course, at the same time, they're very non-transparent about sharing any kind of information about the lab.
Right.
And yeah, in the US, I think things have shifted slowly with now the Republicans gaining control, and I think slowly starting the process of looking into the American side of things, like eco-health and all of the research, NIH-funded research that was being done in Wuhan. I think right now that effort is still lacking like subpoena power. It's still not really mandatory for people like Senator Rand Paul questioning to answer those questions, or to share the data that the Republican investigation is requesting. Like, what exactly were you guys working on? Like for EcoHealth, they sent them a letter asking to share all of the underlying also raw data on the research that has been ongoing. But of course, without subpoena power, EcoHealth doesn't really have to comply. So, yeah, and I mean, on our end, like from the side of like the hobbyists investigating the origins, we're still looking into some things that we think might yield some clues. Like we're doing just metagenomic analysis of data sets from Wuhan, from around like 2020 or 2019, and trying to see if we can notice any kind of needles in the haystack that might point to some potentially, gain of function work that was going on at the time in Wuhan. And also, I mean, to that end, we just published a preprint about this MERS-like coronavirus that we found in the data set from 2020, from early 2020. That seems like it's a part of a gain of function research. And at the same time, also, I guess we are kind of engaged in debate with the zoonotic side of the hypothesis. Like maybe like half a year ago, this paper came out about the Wuhan seafood market by Worby and others, who seem to really, I think, overemphasize the market as the source of the pandemic. And so we've been also, like our group of authors have been trying to point out some weak areas in those arguments and show that really, I mean, the market is not the source of the spillover, but it's more consistent with just being a super spreading place. So it's not necessarily the virus originated there, because we still don't have any animals or animal intermediate hosts, like animal infections that we can point to. Right. So that's also been kind of keeping us busy addressing the market hypothesis, showing some weaknesses in that argument, and also everything surrounding the early days of the outbreak, the patterns of like human movement in Wuhan, and pointing out that the area around the market was really like a high traffic area. And at the same time, like looking into other things that could potentially yield novel clues as to the kind of work that's been going on in Wuhan in the early days of, well, just before the outbreak, and maybe just around the time of the outbreak. I remain hopeful that eventually we'll find out, you know, either way, like maybe some really compelling evidence of
Right,
zoonosis will come out. They'll find some animals
right.
with the precise virus, like a progenitor virus, that we will all agree that it's probably like for SARS-1, it's probably the original
Yeah,
animal virus. Or
yeah,
conversely, for the lab leak hypothesis, we might have some additional evidence
yeah,
emerge, maybe out of the American efforts into looking into eco-health and what kind of viruses maybe they were aware or working together with Wuhan Institute of Virology on. So we might, uncover some additional documents, some
hmm,
additional evidence that will further
right,
increase the probability that it
right,
was a lab leak, maybe beyond a reasonable doubt. If some people still have reasonable doubt, but
right,
um, we might uncover evidence on the American side that will push that beyond reasonable doubt. But of course, there's no guarantees, right? Yeah, it could just if things remain as they are and nothing new emerges over time,
right,
consensus might shift. Like if, for example, people keep looking within
yeah,
China or around China for animals with these viruses and keep not finding any zoonotic infections like intermediate hosts,
yeah,
then I think consensus will solidify around that it
hmm,
really was a lab leak, but basically the proper investigation could never been done. So
right.
yeah, there's many possibilities, but I remain hopeful that
True.
we eventually will know the truth. Yeah, it's still a preprint, so it's not peer reviewed. It's not a
Okay,
paper yet,
okay,
but it's about this finding that in a data set from Wuhan from early 2020, like January
yeah,
2020, there
yeah,
was a rice sequencing data set, like that has nothing to do with viruses, but in the data set, we were able to detect contamination of a virus, a MERS-like virus, a coronavirus, from the MERS family that was never published. Like it's unpublished virus. It remains unpublished to this day, and it's also in a format that is in the reverse genetic system. So basically, it shows that there was active work on this coronavirus in Wuhan that is unpublished. And moreover, not only did we find that virus, we also found a potential chimera, this virus with the MERS spike protein spliced in instead of the original spike protein. So this is all gain of function work, and MERS is a very lethal virus, like human mortality of over 30% of those who've been infected by MERS. So this represents to us a very dangerous gain of function work. I mean, we know that the Wuhan Institute of Virology, together with EcoHealth, have been working on gain of function into MERS, and they were creating chimeras. I mean, this is all
hmm,
documented and
hmm,
funded by the NIH, by the way. But the chimeras they were creating, they were taking the MERS full virus and changing
yeah,
MERS spike, replacing
yeah,
it by spikes from the HKU4 virus. And that
yeah,
HKU4 spike is not as good at binding human receptor as the MERS virus. But what we found is the opposite. They took the backbone of the
hmm,
HKU4, but replaced the spike by the MERS spike, which is much better at binding to human
hmm,
receptor than the original bat
hmm,
HKU spike. And so this could be, potentially quite dangerous if this virus ever escapes.
yeah, yeah,
It would potentially be yeah, as bad as
yeah,
MERS, or maybe even
yeah,
worse.
yeah, yeah,
And so this, like, to us, this conclusively shows that there were unpublished viruses, unpublished reverse genetic systems that people were working on in Wuhan at the time of of the pandemic. And so this refutes the argument that SARS-CoV-2 could not have come from like an unpublished backbone. Like one of the arguments that Proximal Origins was making that, oh, if SARS-2 was engineered, they would have used one of the known reverse genetic systems, which of course, I mean, even at the time, it was a very weak argument, but now we know that there were unpublished reverse genetic systems, coronavirus reverse genetic systems in use in Wuhan. So it's completely within the realm of possibility that there was one built around the progenitor of SARS-CoV-2. They just published a paper on the MERS, like Wuhan Institute of Virology, Xi Jinping's lab. They just published a paper on this MERS-like virus found in pangolins. It's actually a very interesting coincidence. It's a different virus than the one we found, but they just published, like, essentially like a couple of days before our preprint got approved for bioRxiv. They published a paper. They found MERS-like viruses in pangolin samples from like 2019. Yeah, I saw that article, and then of course WHO came out and refuted it. Said they're actually not. I haven't given up, and I don't know what's going on. Like maybe there's some sort of like political games in progress there. I mean, I hope, of course, without China's full cooperation, this investigation is not going to be successful and might actually be just a farce like the first one was. So yeah, I'm hopeful that, you know, maybe if efforts continue and eventually, you know, China softens its stance into admitting that I mean, there's nothing, well, I don't know, shameful, I guess, about an accident. Of course, now they kind of committed if they've been denying it so long. They can't really admit that they've been trying to hide something. So, but I don't know. I guess part of me just hopes that one day maybe they'll come about and just say that, yeah, we you know, now are realizing that there's been some oversight, or in terms of like just how transparent we've been with this investigation, and that things will change. But I'm not too optimistic about that happening. I'm much more optimistic about the US side of the investigation. So into, like, as I said, EcoHealth. Well, I mean, even if gain-of-function research didn't have anything to do with this pandemic, potentially this kind of research, I think, is just too dangerous with very little benefit for us continuing to create these, you know, potentially enhanced viruses and for human transmission, enhanced for human transmission, and dangerous for humans. I think. I mean, I realize this is what virologists do, and that's the kind of research that lately, or just, you know, that's the kind of science that is publishable. But from like the perspective of humanity, is like stakeholders, like there's 8 billion stakeholders in this kind of work who really don't benefit a single bit from this kind of work, but who share the risk if something goes wrong. If like a MERS-like virus emerges and starts killing people at like 30% mortality,